let's go ahead and work on example 2. Again, step 1 is looking for a GCF. So looking at my numbers, we have 1, 5, and 6. What number goes into all those? Well, 1 is my lowest number, so I don't ever have a numerical GCF if 1 is your lowest number. Next, look at your variables. I have x squared, x, and a number. They also don't share any x's on this one, so this one also has no GCF. So skipping ahead to step number 2, I'm going to go ahead and draw myself 2 sets of parentheses. And again, how do I get this first term? What times what is x squared? Well, x times x is x squared. Then to find the values, I'm going to draw myself that x. I'm going to say what multiplies to be a positive 6 and what adds to be that negative 5. Again, you're going to list your factors, 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. That's a terrible 3. But it gets us back around. We've checked all our factors. Okay, 6 is actually a unique number because I can get a 5 by either a 1 or a 1 and a 6 and a 2 and a 3. So this one you got to be very careful with your signs. So I want to add to be a negative 5. So if I wanted to use 1 and 6, I would need to have a positive 1 and a negative 6. But having a positive 1 and a negative 6 would not multiply to give me a positive 6. So in this case, 1 and 6 are not going to work. So I'm going to have to use the 2 and the 3. How do I make a negative 5? Well, I want to have both negatives because a negative 2 and a negative 3 give me negative 5. Double check. Is negative 2 times negative 3 going to give me that positive 6? Yes, it is. So just take these guys straight over and put your negative 2 and your negative 3. And that is our final answer. I'm going to go ahead and box it off. But of course, I'm going to go ahead and just double check my work. Multiplying these first terms together, x times x is x squared. Multiplying these last terms together should give me a positive 6. And again, you have chosen these numbers on purpose. So these first and last terms should always work out. We're just double checking our middle values. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And my outer product, x times negative 3 is a negative 3x. Combine those together, just add them, and you get a negative 5x. Check my work to make sure it matches the beginning, and it does, and I know it's correct. All right, number 3, we're going to go ahead and step 1 is find GCF. My numbers are 1, 5, and 6. And if you notice, this question looks almost exactly like question 2, except I have a negative 6 instead of a positive 6. So this one's also going to have a no GCF. I have a 1, which if my smallest number is 1, then I never have a numerical GCF. And again, there's no x value here, so there is no GCF. Okay, going ahead to step 2, I'm going to draw myself 2 sets of parentheses. And again, how do I get x squared? Well, that's x times x. Then I've got to find my numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and draw myself an x. What multiplies to be negative 6 and adds to be negative 5? Again, my factors are still 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. I didn't change my numbers. But this time, when I want to add to be a negative 5, if I choose a negative 2 and a negative 3, negative 2 times negative 3 is not negative 6. So in this case, negative 2 and negative 3 are not going to work. So I have to use 1 and 6. Well, how do I make 1 and 6 be negative 5? What kind of 1, what kind of 6? Well, again, I want to keep the sign of the bigger, so it matches my answer. So I would need a negative 6 and a positive 1. Positive 1 minus 6 is negative 5, or negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. Double check your product. 1 times negative 6, good to go. Fill in these guys, 1 and a negative 6, and you are done. So I'm going to go ahead and box that guy off. But I always want to double check my work because these questions are so easy. First times first is x squared. Let's go ahead and write them out. 1 times negative 6 is a negative 6. Check my inner product, 1x. Check my outer product, negative 6x. Does a positive 1x and a negative 6x in fact give me a negative 5x? Yes, it does. So this guy is also correct, and we are done. All right, question number 4. Again, step 1 is to check for GCF. My numbers are 1, 3, and 1. Again, if you have a 1, there's going to be no numerical GCF. Checking for x's, there's no x here, so there is no GCF. I'm going to stop writing the no GCF thing and just go straight to step 2. I'm going to do my 2 parentheses. Again, how do I get x squared? Well, that's x times x. And I'm allowed to do x method because I have leading coefficient of 1, so I'm going to go ahead and draw my x there. What multiplies to be my last value of positive 1, and what adds to be my middle value of a positive 3? Well, what are the factors of 1? Well, the factors of 1 are just 1 times 1. Is there any way to make 1 and 1 give me a 3? No. There is nothing I can do, so this answer actually is prime. And what prime means is that I'm not able to rewrite this guy in any other way. I cannot put in any numbers in here that when I multiply it back out will work. Because there's no way to make, if I tried to plug in a 1 and a 1, well 1 plus 1 is 2, and that's not going to work. So this guy is prime, and that is all you can do. You just write prime and you're done. All right, number 5, again, GCF, looking at my numbers, 2, 14, and 24. Well, my GCF in this case is going to be a 2. 2 goes into 14 and into 24 evenly, so my GCF is 2. Check for your variables, x squared, x. There's no x here, so there's no GCF. So I'm going to go ahead and divide each term by 2, bring out my GCF, and I'm going to do 1 long parentheses. If you ever have a GCF, you need to write it on the outside and then actually go ahead and divide first before you jump to the 2 parentheses thing. Just divide. 2 divided by 2 is 1. X squared divided by nothing is x squared. Positive 14 divided by 2 is a positive 7. X divided by nothing is still x. And positive 24 divided by 2 is a positive 12. So there is my trinomial, and now it's a trinomial of degree 2, leading coefficient of 1, so I can go ahead and do the x method. So I'm going to go ahead and bring down my GCF and draw my 2 parentheses and fill in the variable. What times what is x squared? Well, x times x is x squared. Go ahead and what multiplies to be 12 and adds to be 7? If you don't know, 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, check your factors. Of these factors, which ones will add to be a positive 7? What's a 3 and a 4? So I'm going to put a 3 and a 4 and double check your signs, also positive 12. I want to add to be positive 7, so I need a positive 3 and a positive 4. Do positive 3 and positive 4 multiply to be positive 12? They do. So plus 3 and plus 4. And that is my final answer. But I'm going to go ahead and double check my work. Again, bring down your GCF, and I'm going to go ahead and write out my terms here. X times x, x squared. 3 times 4 is a positive 12. Checking your inner product and your outer product gives me a 3x and a 4x, which together is a 7x. So now I got back this process here. Assuming you factored this part correctly, you should have your final answer correct. I'm just going to double check. 2 times x squared is 2x squared. 2 times 7x is 14x, and 2 times 12 is a positive 24, and this guy matches my very first answer, so I know for a fact that this is also correct. All right, number 6, again, starting with GCF, look at your numbers, 2, 10, and 48. Always check your smallest number. If your smallest number goes into all of them evenly, that is your GCF, so GCF is 2. Then check your variables, x squared, x, oops, no x, so there's no x on my GCF. So, divide every single term by 2, bring out your GCF, draw 1 big parentheses. If you have a trinomial here, you should also have a trinomial here. Divide each term and you should have 3 terms left over. 2 divided by 2 is again a 1, leaving me x squared. Negative 10 divided by 2 is a negative 5. X's have nothing to cancel out with, so I'm stuck with an x. And then half of 48 is negative 24. Again, leading coefficient of 1, so I am able to do the x method. Draw your parentheses. How do you get x squared? Well, that's x times x. Doing the x method, what multiplies to be negative 24 and adds to be a negative 5? Factors of 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. Of those, which ones can add to give me a negative 5? Will be these guys. So I need a 3 and an 8. Which again, you got to decide on your signs. I want to have a negative 5, so I need a negative 8 and a positive 3. Double check. Is positive 3 times negative 8 negative 24? Yes, it is. So then just fill in your values and you are done. Again, I'm just going to check. I know that x times x is x squared, and that's a negative 24. I'm just going to check my inner product, 3x, and my, not enough space here, sorry about that, outer product, negative 8x. Does a 3x and a negative 8x give me a negative 5x? Yes, it does. Bring down my GCF, and I'm not going to write it out, but 2 times that is 2, 2 times that is negative 10, and 2 times negative 24 is negative 48. So I know for a fact that guy is also correct. All right, number 7, checking for a GCF again. We have 4, 12, and 40. Looking at those numbers, 4 is the smallest. 4 does go into 12 and into 40 evenly, so my GCF is going to be 4. Looking at the variables, I have x cubed, x squared, and x. They all have an x, but they only have one x in common, so I'm taking out a 4x. So I'm going to go ahead and write 4x in a big parentheses. I'm going to divide each term by 4x and write down the remaining parts. 4 divided by 4 is 1. X cubed divided by x is x squared because it's 3 minus 1. Negative 12 divided by 4 is a negative, whoa, that's a terrible 3. Let's try that again. That's going to be a negative 3. And then x squared divided by x is just x. Negative 40 divided by 4 is a negative 10, and x cancel. I now have a trinomial of degree 2 with leading coefficient of 1, so I can do the x method. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my 2 parentheses. What times what is x squared? X and x. I'm going to do my x method. What multiplies to be negative 10 and adds to be a negative 3. My factors of 10 are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Hopefully you can see that it has to be a 2 and a 5. But what kind of 2, what kind of 5? Well, I want a negative 3, so the sign of the bigger has to be the sign I keep, so a negative 5 and a positive 2. Double check. Is positive 2 times negative 5 negative 10? Yes, it is. So there's plus 2 and there's minus 5. Okay, and that guy is your final answer. Just double check real quick. I'm going to say 4x. X times x is x squared. Positive 2 times negative 5 is a negative 10. Inner product, 2x. Outer product, negative 5. That, in fact, gives me negative 3x. And I'm going to stop there just to save time, but that guy is correct. All right, question number 8. Step 1, again, is to find our GCF. So GCF, looking at the numbers, we have a negative 1, a negative 8, and negative 15. In this case, my 1 is negative, so I do need to take out a negative. If your leading coefficient is negative, you've always got to factor out a negative for this x method to work. So even though it's a 1, I'm going to take the negative away. Then variables. I have x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, x squared. Well, they all have at least 2 x's. So this one has 2, 3, and 4, so x squared. Then we have a y, and a y. So they all have a y. So my GCF is negative x squared y. So I'm going to go ahead and write negative x squared y, and then one big long parentheses, and divide every single thing by negative x squared y. All right. When you divide here, negative and negative cancel. X to the 4th divided by x squared, you're taking away 2 x's, leaving 2 x's, and the y's cancel. Negative 8 divided by negative 1 is a positive 8. 3 x's take away 2 x's is 1x, and the y's cancel. Negative 15 divided by negative 1 is a positive 15. The x squareds cancel, and the y's also cancel. So now I have a trinomial of degree 2 and a leading coefficient of 1. So I'm going to go ahead and copy down my GCF, do my 2 parentheses, copy my variables. Again, how do I get x squared? It's x times x. And I'm going to go ahead and do my x method to the side. What multiplies to be 15 and adds to be 8? 1 and 15, 3 and 5. So my numbers are going to be 3 and 5. So 3 and 5. I want a positive 8, so I need a positive 3 and a positive 5. Double check, does positive 3 times positive 5 give you positive 15? Yes, it does. So plus 3 and plus 5. And that is our final answer. And again, you can check this guy by multiplying out and making sure the answer works.